Hello, welcome to the Forge Your Trail podcast. My name is Frank Rodriguez. I'm your host. Today we have as our guest Mr. Mike Clark, who is the executive chef for the OKC Thunder, if you can believe that. What a great guest to have on. Thank you for being here today, Mike. I see that you've got your Thunder gear on.
Yes, sir. I just came from work. Was cooking up some burgers for the guys today, so I didn't want to, make everybody hungry in here, so I had to remove the coat. But yeah, happy to be here. I appreciate you guys.
Well, thank you for being our guest. Can you maybe explain to us just a little bit, what does it mean to be the executive chef for a professional sports team?
So I've worked in a lot of different areas of the restaurant industry. Previous to doing this, I've been there this will be my sixth season. Started in 2019. Wow. And usually the focus is more on the restaurant industry, like, making sure your numbers are right, controlling labor, costs, all those things, where I've now pivoted and I've learned a lot more about nutrition, and meaning, what that does to the human body and how our players react to certain things that, they eat, and just making sure that they're available for all the games, because that's their job. So my job is to make sure that we're trying to supplement them as best we can, to make sure that they can do what they need to do on the court.
That's interesting. So do you work with like a strength and conditioning coach to sort of plan a menu for them, or?
Sure. We have basically a set of parameters that we work within, and that is something that one of the strength coaches did set up. He's with our performance and medical team, and he set these parameters up, and basically what we're trying to do in all sports, one thing that's especially at the highest level of professional sports is there's going to be inevitable injuries. And so what we're trying to do is mitigate those injuries, and whether that means, we're reducing their inflammation or we're making their recovery faster. So there's a lot more emphasis now on what I do in the nutritional element, which has been a learning experience for me, but it's also really cool to see, how young players and even older players can extend their longevity in their careers based on how they eat. We're probably a very small part of, their entire thing, and even if it's like 5% or less, everyone has to eat. So we would prefer them to eat properly and coach them and teach them how to make those decisions on their own if they're not with us, like when the team's on the road.
Yeah. So, Mike, tell us about, this last season was wow, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Must have been great to be.
Yes, sir.
So tell us a little bit about that experience and just sort of the hectic aspect of being the chef.
Sure. So my specific role is I'm over all of their, all of the chefs. There's 6 of us in total, and I kind of make sure that operations are running as smooth as possible. We provide all the food and nutrition at the practice facility, at the arena on game days, and then also my particular role, I handle all of their road food, whether that means flight meals, hotel meals, arena meals, post-game meals, all of that. I coordinate all that and set all that up for them on the road as well as here. So it's definitely a long season. We get going. Training camp is typically around the beginning of October, and then we ended, this year in the finals at the end of June, which obviously makes for a very, very long season. And 7 games of the finals is also just, it's hectic. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of, people are excited. It's mixed emotions, right? Like excitement, but also a little bit stressful. So, the way that we approach it is trying to make sure that the guys are, obviously ready to play, but also feeding them things that, it's going to make them feel better. It's not always highfalutin kind of stuff, but it's things that young guys would like, and that's how we kind of coerce them into wanting to eat with us and make good choices with us, as opposed to like everyone has an option of like going to, a fast food joint or something, but we want the guys to eat with us, and we, that's kind of one of the challenges for us.
And so can you maybe just tell us some of the dishes that you said, something that a young guy might like to eat?
Sure.
What would that be?
Like I said earlier, we did hamburgers and wings today.
Yeah.
But in that, that's part of our that would probably be like one of the top ones. A lot of barbecue. We throw a healthy mix of salmon in there as well. Get you a lot of good omegas. Trying to reduce that inflammation. And that's when we say we did burgers and wings today. We do organic chicken that's no antibiotics. It's all cage-free. Same thing with our cage-free eggs. Grass-fed meats, organic produce, cheese. It's all very high quality, products. And so when these guys eat it, yes, it is a hamburger, but they're also burning a tremendous amount of calories, and they need to recover. And the burger that we give them is going to be a lot more substantially clean than, say, like a restaurant or a fast food place. And so we try to, within our parameters, be like, hey, we're going to make something, that I was a young guy, and I remember what it was like. And yes, hamburgers and wings are like fantastic. So, we fry them in avocado oil, or we roast them, or we smoke them. So it's just a lot cleaner version of the items that they would want to eat.
Yeah. So I think you said you have 6 chefs that you supervise?
Yes, including myself.
Including yourself, yes. Okay. So 5 that you supervise. So I guess maybe I was under the misimpression that the chef traveled with the team everywhere they went.
Sometimes I do. Not typically, just because there's not a whole lot for me to do. I partner with one of my strength and conditioning coaches, and he's pretty versed in it, and he and I work in tandem and really well, as far as communicating with him. Hey, this is who I've got for this post-game meal. Here's all the stuff for the pregame, all of those things. So, he handles all that. If I do travel, it's typically I need to go and see someone else's facility, or go and meet with another chef, another nutritionist on one of these teams, which I do, and I communicate with those folks as well.
Yeah. So is there like an association of executive chefs for the NBA, or?
It is trending that way. We are working on it. Currently, there's only 30 NBA teams, so there's 29 others out there, and I know pretty much all of the chefs or nutritionists on all these teams. So we're working on getting that to be a thing. There's always, there's an association for the trainers. There's an association for like all of these other groups. And so we were like, why can't we get one for the chefs? And then that way we can maybe enact some more changes and stuff for the like league wide, and make some people some preferred vendors or things like that, and have some real change.
Mm-hmm. So I'm a little bit of a foodie, but not chef quality.
Sure.
But I'd like to know a little bit about the kitchen, or what are the facilities that they provide for you?
So we have got a very nice, they've put a lot of trust into us, and myself, as far as like helping design and redesign things at our practice facility, which is our main kitchen. And we've just got, all of the tools that we need to execute basically any kind of food. We've got a nice smoker there, outdoor grill area. Indoors, it's like we have an action station set up, and then obviously all our prep is done right there. It's a very open kitchen. So when you come in there, the idea is that players can see that we are preparing the food, cutting the salmon, all these things, cutting the steaks off these big, loins, all these. It's a lot of like visual, and they go, oh wow, like this translates as this looks like they're doing it here, more than like we're just buying and procuring and just cooking things that somebody else, did. So our setup is very nice, and we just keep adding people. So it's, we need that as far as space. And then, same deal at the arena. We have a full kitchen down there with flat tops and ovens and all the bells and whistles.
So just out of curiosity, is it like, do they sit down for team meals, or is it more like a cafeteria style where they come in onesies and twosies? Or?
Yeah, it's kind of it's more of a cafeteria style. We do have a buffet. That's primarily what we operate on. However, we do encourage guys, if they don't see something, to let us know that there is something, and we can either get it in the mix, or we can have things on hand for them specifically, and that's what we really like. It just adds a personal touch.
Right.
Plus, it gets them talking to the chefs, and that's important, because then we can educate them on certain things. And there's a lot of these conversations that happen where it's just like, hey, like, I'm watching a guy who's 20 years old who played at, Kentucky or, one of these big time schools. And you're like, they've been all over the world, but they've never tried salmon before or something. And they're trying it the first time with us in a very high quality product. So it's really cool to see like how these guys grow themselves. And like, that's what we really like, is like that personal touch. And we can still do that. I know there's probably some sports, like if you go and work for, even maybe OU football, which Boomer Sooner, right? But if you go in there, you're feeding tons and tons of athletes, hundreds of people every day. We're not quite at that level. We do have a large staff over there as well that get to take part in everything that we do. So all of this clean eating, and it kind of surrounds the organization. And that's what we want, is people to see that and be like, everyone's locked in as far as like how they do stuff there, and everybody gets that, because yes, we want the players healthy, but we also need the coaches healthy and the trainers and everyone else. So just moving forward like that is always the plan.
So is this like a 365 days a year kind of job where you're always?
Not always there. We do have a smaller off season. This year was certainly a smaller off season.
Very short.
As soon as things happen after summer league, we'll have guys stay back and do some training. But a lot of like the top guys will maybe go back home for a while, because they also need to spend time with their families and be able to kind of decompress from the long season, because we've got another long season coming up, and so I would say it's 3/4, if not a little bit more. And it seems like every year we're adding another element to be able to be like, there's enough, push here that we need to make sure we're feeding everyone, whether it's front office or players or whoever.
Yeah. So do you get to know the players personally down to their tastes? Like, this one wants chocolate ice cream? Or,
right, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a ton of engagement with these guys, which is always cool, because, that is a question that I get frequently, is like, how do you know Shea or anything? Yeah. It's like, yeah, absolutely. I, speak with them. We're around them just as much during the season, because we're up there and we are such a small staff. And I believe that's intentional, to make sure that they get used to seeing our faces. There's a level of trust there as well. And we know, I know this guy wants this smoothie on game days at this time. He wants these afterwards, like all these subtle little things that you pick up on. And that's kind of like a really cool personal touch, again, that we get to have with these guys, because like moving on and like, years from now, and be able to like, oh yeah, I remember, he really liked this shake or whatever. Like, and just, they'll know that too. They know that because when they say they, depart the team, whether it's a trade or they retire or something, they always come back and they're like, man, can I get like my usual or whatever? And like, we've certainly had a fair amount of that over the years.
That's so cool. That's really neat. So do you love this job?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been cooking since I was in college. I worked full time and went to school full time, and it was definitely, it's been a rigorous, going through all that, but like working up the ranks, and then being where I am now, like I feel like I'm learning a lot more about the nutritional aspect, which is cool, because I'm also learning at the same time as teaching.
Yeah.
So that's a very fun thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so we're not having you here on our show just to talk about basketball.
Sure.
You are a father, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so we want to talk to you a little bit about your family. Tell us a little bit about how many children do you have and that sort of thing.
Sure. So I have 2 boys and a daughter. Married, wife Allie. Hey, Allie. And, my oldest is 12, down to 7 as my youngest. My daughter's 9. So we're kind of all over the board, but definitely in the thick of all of the sports, all of the lifestyles, and learning ourselves as parents, and trying to figure out, what it's like to have almost a teenager with, still the 7-year-old in the house, and how we navigate through that.
Yeah, that the teenager years are going to be some interesting years.
Yes. It's a little different than when we were growing up because of all technology.
Yes.
Just things are done differently, but we're learning as we go, and hopefully doing it right. But that's always the plan.
So 3 children, that's quite a workload.
Yes.
Even if you are a couple.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours do you end up having to work as the chef? And tell us a little bit about how do you maintain that work-life family balance?
Sure. So my schedule's it fluctuates a little bit because I may be, we may have 4 or 5 home games. And when that is the case, we make sure all of the meals are happening at the facility as well as at the arena. So those weeks could be pretty heavy, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. Depends on, just kind of depends on what's going on. Certainly more during the playoffs, just because those days become really long and everyone's around. But then there's times when, the team maybe isn't there and nobody's, staying back, and so we don't have a whole lot of responsibilities. So we go in and just work a few hours. So it kind of ebb and flow like that. But it's a challenge from, my wife works a traditional, like, I would say 9 to 5, but she's part-time, really. So, but she works Monday through Friday. And so, being able to have her there to help me, like, when I can't be there, say it is on the weekend, and that's a requirement of mine, I have to be there, when the team needs me. And the team, when they're in town, they need me. So I guess, like, the biggest challenge is just, like, communicating and making sure that we are getting everything covered as far as, like, whether it's childcare or, like, where people need to be, relying on friends, grandparents sometimes. Just it takes a village to, like, really get them to all their stuff. And we're constantly running around, but, I think we do a pretty good job at it.
So you and your wife, it takes a village to raise children, too. So you and your wife must have a good support system to help you. And
Absolutely. My folks, they live in Dallas, and her folks live here. They both went to OU, but they live in Oklahoma City now.
That's convenient.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very convenient. And I didn't realize that when we first had kids, because she was like, I want to move to Oklahoma City. I was like, okay. So we moved up here. And now that we do have children, I was like, I don't know how it would have been very tough to do it without them. But we've also built a lot of relationships with a lot of friends that we can rely on them now as well to help us, like whether it's getting a kiddo somewhere or can one of the kids come and stay with you while I take this other one to, whether it's the clinic or something like that. Anything that needs to happen like that, like, and we would do it vice versa for them as well. Like we've definitely watched people's kids for, anything, because all of our friends now seem to have multiple children. And so you can't be in 3 different places at one time.
Yeah. So do your children get to enjoy being in the arena or being around the players?
Yeah, for sure. Probably not as much as they'd always like, but they do have sports as well that they do. But there's a few times a year that they get to come around and be around the players when they're there. And some of the players now are, a few years ago they were all pretty young, so it was kind of unique for them to be even married, but now some of them are having, children of their own. Yeah. And so, like, that's kind of cool, because then, the kids are in there and and everyone's just kind of, it's not a big deal to them. And I don't want them to ever feel like that loses, how special it is. But at the same time, it's kind of cool to be able to maintain your calm and your chill around these people, because they make, they're superstars, but at the same time, they're just people, and that is also another cool element about our team, is that they are so down to earth, and that's also intentional, right? Like all the players that are here, they're never going to be, too wild or anything like that. And so, like, that's definitely a cool part of it.
It does seem like the Thunder has more of a family feel than an industry feel.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can't speak to any other teams, but only to the things that you see on TV. And sometimes it's embellished, I'm sure. But all of the guys, and I can say this with confidence, is that they are, really genuine guys, and you just don't see a lot of the craziness that happens in other markets, and not speaking ill of anyone, but they behave, I guess.
So, I was a parent myself, and now I'm a grandparent, and I know that children sometimes are hard to feed because they can be picky. They want mac and cheese 7 days a week or whatever. Tell us, how is feeding the team different than feeding your family, and how is it the same?
So at our home, we've kind of adopted a lot of the same things that we do at work. And I found now over the years, like a lot of those things, like say it's avocado oil or grass-fed meats or like antibiotic-free chicken, anything like that is all really accessible. So, we've kind of switched how we cook at home to basically the same as we do at work. And that's a good thing for us, clearly, because, you're eating clean. My kids are getting the benefit of that. We also, I talk with them. I just had a conversation last night with my oldest son about, he was, asking for a soda. And I was like, hey, man, like, I just want to coach you on this and show you, because he's playing football for the first year. And then, when he wakes up and he gets sore and everything, I was like, can I show you something? And I showed him on the soda can, like a label. And I was like, look at this nutritional label. This has this many grams of sugar in this. And he was like, wow, that's like 75%. And I said, and what is a whole? And he said 100%. And I was like, yeah, 75% in one can right there, So like, we've made the changes, and I just want, my kids to be able to be educated enough about it to make good choices. And that's can and has become increasingly more difficult with the way that a lot of the food system is designed. Mm-hmm. But being able for them to look at nutritional labels and ingredients is a huge part of it. And just cooking in general, like at home, like that was something that I did with my folks. I was like 8 or 9 years old when I remember first starting to cook with my dad. And both my folks were working parents, but they loved to cook. They're from New Orleans. They lived in New Orleans for like 30 years. And it was a huge part of our family. And that was like, we always gathered around the dining room table. And I know there's been like a paradigm shift, I guess you would say, from people not doing that as much.
Right.
But I feel like that is more probably a behavioral shift in the idea that cooking takes time, and we don't have time because we live in a world of minutes and seconds. But in actuality, it just takes a little bit of prioritizing what you feel is important in your life. And so like you can cook things, you can prep certain things and have things made in bulk and make quick meals out of that. And that's kind of how like we do that at home. And that's how we, essentially like survive like all these, like I'm going here at 5 and getting home at 8 or 9, like, and just being able to have quick fire meals that we prepared at home versus something that is fast food or full of preservatives or anything like that. And just like trying to cook like whole, just nice, clean meals.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to let this pass without saying that's excellent parenting. Sitting down with your son and saying, well, look here,
Sure.
This is how much sugar. So great job.
I appreciate
on
that.
We like to recognize good parenting.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about fast food. Do you get so busy that sometimes you and your family have to resort to fast food, or? Sure,
yeah, and I mean we're all human, and this again goes back to the conversation last night that I had with my kid, but it's we're not safe from not eating that as well. There are times, whether we're on a road trip or whatever, or we're in between things, and it's important that you also try and meet a certain nutritional level, and you need to eat, right? So I don't just want them to go hungry just because it's a less than stellar option. However, I try to follow like the 80-20 rule, right? Like 80% of the time we're doing really well, and the other 20%, you should also enjoy life, right? Like eating is one of the things that I would say brings most people joy. It's the one thing that we all have to do. And so when you get an opportunity to maybe eat something that was like brings up a really good memory and jogs your memory about, you're like, oh man, I remember going to my grandma's house and we always had, pound cake and strawberries, whipped cream or something like that. And it's like, that is something that can bring up a lot of emotions for a person.
Right.
It's very powerful. So I think you should enjoy, but you should also make good conscious effort to make better choices throughout the day. Like I really want, I'm a sucker for like Big Red soda, but I can't drink it because I'm like, if I do, I'm just going to drink a huge thing of it. So I'm like, if I do, I'm like, okay, I'll have one or something like that. But like, make good choices. Do water or something like that, and don't. And that's like one of the things that I think has really come about in the food industry is a lot of there's things that people believe are natural, and they're not necessarily, or they are in some sense of the word, but also like, because they'll be like, oh, we can have juice. It's like, well, yes, you can, but fresh squeezed orange juice is going to be a little bit different than, say, like something that they've added sugar to it because that tastes good. So you need to just be aware of what you're consuming, and like that's like kind of my big shtick is like let's make a good choice. If we have to, of course, we're gonna make sure that no one goes hungry. But I would prefer to like try and plan it, and that's part of the planning ahead as well. Is like we know we're gonna be going somewhere, so let's eat breakfast or let's eat a good healthy snack at home, so that when we get there, we don't have to eat a bunch of like concessions food or anything like that.
Yeah. So your oldest probably would have been 4 if you've been for 6 seasons when you started. How would you say that being affiliated with the Thunder and watching the Thunder, how has that impacted your fathering?
There's a lot of, I think anyone who works probably in any level of sports, I feel very fortunate because I don't have to travel. But there are a lot of guys that do travel and also have families, so they have to leave their families and children behind. So I never take for granted what I do have, and that's not. I guess it's not just sports. There's a lot of folks who have to travel all the time and be away from their families. So, I think that my role as a father is to, in conjunction with my wife, is just to guide them on what they need to know and what they need to do. From my experience, we all parent from our own experiences,
right.
But also looking at like maybe I have read some books or done some training or whatever that has helped me, and I've picked up on things when I see other people do, like something really remarkable. We have some friends who have some 15 and 16-year-old kids. And I was talking to them, this was back this summer, and I was like, this is incredible. How do you guys approach, doing that? I really respect the way that your older kids, you work with you guys and how you guys communicate and like, how do you go about that? So I've gotten a lot of, I guess it'd be like opinions from them on like how they do it. Advice, of course. Mm-hmm. And so like, I just, look at people that I look up to and I think, they have good values. And so that's how I parent. It's like I take some of that, and then there's also things that you see. You're like, maybe I don't want to do that. I see the things that I do want to do, but I certainly don't want to do that other thing that you see, because you can take away something from every situation, whether it's good or bad. So, just being a stand-up guy and showing my kids that, hey, this is how I operate and how I act professional at work and with you guys, and I want you guys to do the same.
What do you think that your children learn from watching you work with Thunder?
Hopefully, they're learning discipline, and also, what they see is that their dad is a professional and knows how to conduct himself amongst, young players all the way up to ownership of the Thunder, and that's not just for us. And, I know they don't get to necessarily see all of that happens all the time, because sometimes it's, during games or areas that are closed off to the public and whatnot. But, when I tell them about things, it's just, let's always make sure we have humility and, act with intention and just always be confident in what you are trying to do. And then, we'll always listen. Like that's our job as parents, is to listen to our kids, I feel, and then advise them on that.
Yeah, right. So, this past season particularly was probably very hectic for you and your family. So how do you stay grounded, when you're being pulled so many different directions including with your family
Sure.
and the needs of your own relationship. How do you stay grounded?
It just always, for me, it always goes back like there's, I work to provide for the family, and there's, I always remember like I know how it was working in the restaurants, and there's a lot of evenings, more so than there are in this, and so I'm very aware of like I could easily be back in a restaurant, so I always want to make sure. And no knock on a restaurant, I loved it. Like it's a fantastic camaraderie. It's where I learned a lot. It's where I cut my teeth, doing all that stuff. But now, as a family man, I get to do what I love, which is to cook. But I also get to spend time with my family, and so I always just put that at the forefront, and then remember, like, it's always bigger than me. There's family that I need to take care of, and I want to meet their needs, and communicating that, whether it be with my wife, and there, unfortunately, there are times when it's like, I have things that I need to do at work, and that's when they need me, but I will make up for it on the back end, whether it's doing something, but just communicating that so it doesn't become like an issue, if you will.
Right.
So yeah, it's the nature of the business. This year we're going to have a game on Christmas, but we know that's coming, and we know that's actually a good thing. And so I think like how we communicate that to our kids and to our spouses and whatnot is to be like, hey, this is going to be a deal, but understand we're going to have time before that or after that to do all these things, and I am going to prioritize getting some time with you guys as well. So just trying to juggle that. It can be tricky, but and I hope that I do it best most of the time, but also understanding that they sacrifice a lot so that I can do this as well. I never take anything for granted like that.
I love what you just said. You're cognizant of the fact that your children and your wife are sacrificing so that you can pursue this opportunity, this career. Sure. But it's kind of a double-edged sword there because it provides them with a lot of opportunity as well.
Right. Exactly. And they are fully aware of that, and that's there's just treating my kids and my wife and everyone with a mutual level of respect that their time is also valuable, and it's not just all about me, and it's not just all about work and everything. So I'm trying to make everyone happy, but let everyone know that I respect everyone's time.
You said your child is playing football now.
Yes.
You got to be able to make time to get to the games and the practices.
Yes, and fortunately, right now, until he previously played a little bit of traveling soccer, and so that was a little bit tougher because that was a more like year-round kind of sport, and the games might be in Tulsa or Wichita or all over. So now his games are pretty much local, and they've started. He's had 2 games now, and this will go basically through late October, early November. So that's the beginning of the season for me, and we're not quite at the point where it's as much as a struggle right now. We're on a little bit more scheduled out plan right now. But once we get to late October, early November, things start getting the ball's rolling. We're definitely into season. Season will begin October 22nd, 22nd, first home game. So, I'll kind of be getting to so it's like a sweet spot for me. And I was like very excited about that because I was like, oh, I don't have to like miss anything. And I'll be able to make all his practices. And it can be tough, and we've definitely had him travel with other people that on the team, and that were very gracious to take him along and let him board with them for the night or whatever, wherever they were. So we're really appreciative of all those kind of things.
That's so neat.
Yeah.
So, say at the end of a long day, how do you like decompress?
So I would say probably one of our longer days would be like a game day, because that's a day that requires a lot of, stuff from basically 8 in the morning until after the game. And if you have a 7 o'clock game, we're not getting out of the arena kitchen until could be 11 p.m. So
Right.
I'm not necessarily there that entire time, but I'm responsible for things that are happening. So whether it's, I'm may not be on location, but I am, working with people and making sure everything's going. So it's a fairly long day, but just it just goes back to getting home. And obviously the kids aren't going to be awake during that time. Hopefully they're sleeping. But, a lot of times my wife will be there and she'll wait up for me and just kind of talking about the day. It's the same thing that I would do on a short day or a long day, and just being like, how was everything? Like, good day? Like, anything notable happen? Is there anything you need to talk about? Anything? And there's always, with 3 kids, there's always something to talk about. Something's going on, and so we just try to make sure that we're communicating, and like that's my decompression, is a nice little drive home, listen to some music, maybe a podcast, maybe whatever it is, maybe it's in silence, depends on how the day went, and then just like kind of self-reflecting. Then that's my time, because driving, I live in North Edmonds, so driving from the arena up to my house can take 40 minutes, and I have a nice little bit of time.
Yeah.
And just spending some time and thought for myself, but also speaking with my spouse, because we're doing this together.
Well, you look like you're really fit, so I thought maybe you were going to tell me I go run 10 miles or go work out. Or maybe I go home and cook.
Well, and we do, that's actually a good point. So we do belong to a gym that they do workouts at the same time. Like, our kids do a workout at the same time that my wife and I do. And that was a really cool element that made us want to join that. And I think that's just as important as like the cooking part, is to say your kids see that you are also putting in work, because it's work, right? Like going to the gym, and I'm not an early gym guy. So I'm like late afternoon, evening, when the kids get out of school, they need to burn off some energy. We need to go to the gym. So it's a conscious thing, and it's so much easier to say, I'm not going to go. It's just almost too easy. But getting in the car and making a conscious decision to drive down there and be like, I'm trying to make myself better. Like, I have to do this.
So did you play sports yourself?
I did. Growing up, I did soccer, baseball. I never played football. And we always kind of thought our oldest would never play football, and that's what we said. And here we are, playing football. And then I wrestled through high school. So,
okay.
And we would actually come up here to wrestle at OU, and we found out how good Oklahoma really was at wrestling.
Yeah. Our cameraman is a former wrestler as well.
Nice.
Okay. What would you say is the best piece of parenting advice that you've ever received?
Honestly, I feel like this is one that it works through a lot of facets, but it's just be patient and listen. And I know it's kind of a 2-part deal, but actually listening to what your kids are telling you, and not just having your own opinions, being able to kind of put yourself in their shoes and understand that, while it wasn't important for us, as kids, like, we didn't grow up with phones. This is just an example. Like, I didn't grow up with a phone, but I know now all these kids are having phones. And so while it's easy to dismiss it and be like, you don't need a phone right now, there's no reason to have that. It can become almost a status thing. And that in like middle school and high school, that can, like, listening to their concerns about that is like, okay, maybe I do, like, it's a different time, and I need to actually listen. And that's just one example. This happens all the time. And then being, acting on that, or giving them, explaining, what certain things are, or reasons that you're not doing it. But then the patience part comes in, as far as just, people are going to make mistakes.
Right.
And we know that's inherent, and we will, that's what I tell our kids. We know you're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen, but we always want you to trust us, to be able to tell us things, so that a simple mistake doesn't become a larger issue. And that's where the trust comes in as well. And it's just like, if you make a mistake, we're not going to be super angry about it, but we do ask that you learn from your mistakes, and whether that be a small thing or a big thing. They're always learning opportunities, they're coaching opportunities we can learn from this. So, we made the mistake. Let's just move on and let's learn from that. And that's kind of like patience and listening.
So in our curriculum, we do teach that being patient and being present are two of the most important things. And being present means even if you can't be there all the time, when you're with your children, you're with your children. And that sounds like how you tend to practice.
Right. And here we are in 2025, almost 2026. And I mean, it's, with devices and everything, I mean, people's, their ability to focus on something has been diminished tremendously. And so, like, when it's so easy to get distracted, there was something that I read about how many different advertisements that even our kids see throughout a day, and it was something like astronomical,
right?
And how big it is. And so, like you say, being present is a huge part of it. Like, are you actually here listening to me? And showing them, and it's like, yes, I am actively listening to you right now.
This is a little bit of a different question. If you had the power to cook a meal for every father out there, what do you think it would be?
Man, that is kind of tough. I mean, honestly, if I was going to say something that, and this is going to sound really simple, but it would be a steak dinner for every dad that I know. And I think it's kind of funny because if I go to a person's barbecue, the thing that they're most familiar with and that they're most comfortable with is grilling. Mm-hmm. And even I think it's just one of those where they're like, I can just put the chicken on there, I can put the steak on there or whatever, but actually being like, hey, here's a different method, or here's how to make that even better. And then they would be like, oh, when he grills, he really knows what he's doing. And just locking in, there's people that I work with now, not chefs, but other people in the organization that they don't cook a lot, but they're like, when they make steak, they can do it really well because either we've taught them or it's become such a big cultural thing. It's like, hey, you come over to my house, I'm doing New York strips or whatever. But I think it's also a really cool confidence thing when you have someone over and you can prepare a meal and people eat it and they're like, that's incredible. And you've made something now. You have actually created something with your talent and with your hands that not everyone can do. And you can do it at a high level.
Yeah. So if you were my friend, I suppose I would probably be a little bit hesitant to invite you over for a dinner that I cook. Do you get that?
Sometimes, but truth be told, I am always excited when somebody else is cooking because I do a fair amount of it at the house and then obviously for work. But I love doing it. And I think that, there's every time I go over, people, are nervous, but I'm like, can I show you a better way? Or, hey, that's great. You should do what you were comfortable with. And it's not always that they're doing anything wrong, but there's always there is typically a different way to do something. And so just because somebody does something a little differently doesn't mean it's wrong because we still got the same outcome, right? And so I think that's a cool, unique thing.
So as a father, you're always building and leaving a legacy. What legacy do you think you want to leave for both your children and your time as a chef at the Thunder?
Yeah, I'm 39 now, so it's kind of a funny thing to think about, but I definitely hope that, kind of the same way that anytime I've left a job or anything and moved on for one reason or another is, I want people, my opinion, when a chef leaves a place and then that place, say it goes to shambles, means that maybe that chef wasn't doing what he was supposed to do.
Oh, interesting.
In training people, because when I'm not there, service is happening right now as I'm here, but I know they're doing the right thing because we built a culture there and expectations and an understanding of what should be happening. So I think that your legacy is almost not that you go unnoticed, but things carry on in the way that you would like to have seen them go on as if you were there, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does.
And it's like, legacy is just, I want people to see me as, hey, he was, obviously a hardworking guy. He was genuine, and he respected his people and his staff and the people that were around him, just as like how I see my grandfather, and that's how he was. And he's actually who we named our son after. And so he's a very nostalgic kid. And so he sees that and he's like, oh man, I've got to like live up to, Corbett's legacy. And I'm like, well, you will, just be a man of integrity and like do the right thing when nobody's looking, and you're going to be fine. That's a hard thing to do, but that's part of it.
Mike, it really sounds like you and your wife are knocking it out of the park as parents. And I really want to just praise you and say thank you for that.
I appreciate that.
That's amazing. You're 39, you said, and here you are at the top. What comes next?
Always still learning. There's nutritional things that I'd like to learn and go and get certified for. And then, like I had spoken on earlier about being a part of a group of chefs and nutritionists in the NBA and seeing what maybe we can all get together and create something more for the league. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what that is right now or what that even looks like, but trying to create systems that help other people out, because I know I'm not going to do this forever, but while I can, I want to be doing it. And it's like I still want to cook, and I never want to get so far away from the joys and love that I have for my actual job and for my my trade. But I know that as I get older, I probably maybe won't be able to, or that my services are best spent like in a different format than just being hands-on with everything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you hope to stay in sports?
It's very fun, and it's really cool because it's teaching. And I've never thought I'd be like a teacher or anything like that. And I don't necessarily see myself as that, but I am teaching people how to prepare food, teaching people how to eat, teaching people about nutrition. And that's the cool part of it, because guys, you can enact real change with them. Mm-hmm. And as long as they see the results of what you're teaching them and see that, it's not, for lack of a better term, it's not sexy to eat clean, but teaching young guys that, hey, you're not going to be 22 years old all the time. And if you want to have a nice long career and still be playing 10 years down the road, you need to invest some time and learn about this and make sure you're doing the right thing, because you could certainly have, a bad injury and then end up not playing anymore because of that injury, and you could be 25. I mean, it happens all the time, not specifically to basketball, but in a lot of different sports. So, I just want to continue learning right now and moving ahead in that, and then who knows what the future holds for me. But I definitely have some goals of moving up and then maybe being over more things than just the chef team. So
that is so cool.
Yeah.
So a lot of the participants in our program are on the lower end of the economic spectrum. So what would be the best piece of nutritional advice that you could maybe give to parents who might be struggling a little bit in terms of being able to provide, it's eating clean is
Sure.
expensive.
Right.
So what suggestions might you have?
Well, honestly, like, we are, a family of 5, and I think that any person doesn't necessarily want to go and spend a whole ton more money on their grocery bill or anything like that. So, when you think about preparing things, I mean, it's starting with the procurement. So, ourselves, we shop at Aldi because I know that I can save a lot of money there. Mm-hmm. And I'm not brand name specific. All the items there are just as good as any other grocery store. So if I see something, and that's just kind of me anyway, like, I'm very frugal with how I like to do that, because also I know how much things cost because I buy them for work. And so, you can still get, I think that's a common misnomer, is that because you don't have money that you can't
Eat clean.
And rice and beans is still a fantastic whole meal almost. You could just add eggs in there, and that's a very good clean meal that gets you fiber and protein and carbohydrates and hits all of your macros. So I think that we need to change how people think about what is expensive. If you go in and buy a bunch of steaks, yeah, of course, it's going to be expensive. So my tips for this, and this is what I always tell people, is like when they talk about, even our own friends are like, gosh, we're spending so much money on groceries and all this. Be intentional with what you're buying. A bag of rice is very inexpensive. You can get all of these things. These are commodity products that I use in my own home, and I prepare them in bulk. If you're going to cook 1 cup of rice,
might as well cook 2.
Cook 2, cook 3, cook 4, and that's how we kind of survive through the week, because there are so many moving parts, and my wife might be home, whereas I'm going to be not there, and so I want her to be able to, it's easier for her to be like, oh, well, if this is here, then I can just reheat it. And so that's something that isn't chock full of preservatives and all this. So, cook things in bulk, and if you really like pasta, same deal with pasta. If you're going to make chicken, make a bunch of chicken and hold it in the fridge. It'll hold all week, and then you can turn that into different things. I think the element that makes that a little bit easier is like different sauces with different things. So if you like chicken pasta, well, then you have a jar of marinara. If you want to make, chicken like fried rice, then you just have some soy sauce or some kind of like, Japanese cooking sauce or something like that. And these are things that you can get at most grocery stores. Mm-hmm. So I think buying things that are your staples and not thinking you have to prepare a big meal every time is kind of like where people get in trouble, because they're I don't know. I mean, it's very, I look at it a very different way because I do have a restaurant background, but being confident in your ability to cook things at your house and finding a method for, hey, this is how I cook rice every time, and then you will be confident in what you do and you'll be able to execute that. But also, like, speaking to the living in seconds and minutes, is that if it's there and readily available, and I'm guilty of it too, because I'm like, I don't have any, I'd have to cook the rice, I'd have to cook the chicken. Like, it starts to sound really daunting.
Right.
But if it's all in the refrigerator and you just need to microwave it or throw it in a skillet, or in the oven even, everyone can season chicken and put it in the oven. So there's no excuse for that, right? So, it's something that just having it handheld is like ready to go. Just take some time, prepare your food. There's a lot of studies done out there as well about cutting vegetables and doing knife work like that is actually very stress relieving. And there's information about that, but like just sitting down and taking the time, it also shows my kids when they're sitting up there, they're watching me prepare the food. So I'm cutting all the veggies and they're just sitting up there watching, and they're curious, and they're like, what is he doing? Why are you doing that? And like, knowledge is power. So like it's a multiple moments there of teaching and coaching and parenting for them.
Right. Our guest today is Mr. Mike Clark, who is the executive chef for the OKC Thunder. Mike, thank you so much for being on our podcast.
Absolutely.
Before we close out, is there anything that you would like to tell our viewers, or anything that you would like to speak on that I haven't asked you about?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered pretty much everything, but it's just, cooking has become one of these things that people see it as a very daunting task, mm-hmm. but take some time and be in thought about it, and understand that just cooking, it's so much more than just eating and cooking. It's time with your family and kids. Gathering around a table can sound very cliche, but it truly does a lot of good, because that's also where people will open up and they will have those memories. I have very distinct memories about doing that with my family and with my grandparents. And I think that is one thing that like you've got to eat, so you might as well spend some time doing it together, and you can engage them in that as well, and that helps to build trust and just everything that you want, to be as a parent and what you want your kids to see.
That's great advice, Mike. Thank you so very much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Forge Your Trail podcast.